Welcome to the InnerFuel podcast, where we dive deeper into entrepreneurship and mental health. Whether you're a founder, a high achiever, or someone looking for balance, this podcast is here to fuel your journey. Let's get started. So, in the next episode, I want to talk about a topic that is quite fascinating to me, and this idea of high achievers and mental health. Now, a lot of times I come across really successful people and I listen to them on podcasts and YouTube. And although they are really high achievers, but still they suffer with mental health. Now, it just begs the question, how come people that have, let's say, achieved so much and have done so much still still get affected by mental health issues where it may not be expected from people who have achieved so much? I just want to unwrap this bit by bit with you.
So, by mental health issues, are you meaning stress, overwhelm, burnout, depression, anxiety?
I think the one that I wanted to start with would be anxiety, and let's say the crippling effects that anxiety could have on people who are really high achievers.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I specialize in. I actually work with individuals that are high achieving. I actually work with high achieving women who end up experiencing stress, overwhelm, burnout. And so, one of the reasons that women or men, even that achieve so much, a lot of them, and I don't want to generalize, but a lot of the high achieving tendencies tend to be fueled by fear and anxiety. And so
Mm,
an over anxious brain is constantly seeking to do more and wants to do more. And that could be a superpower. But at the same time, it could create irrational thoughts and beliefs. It can create the imposter syndrome that we talked about in another episode. It can create um, fears of uncertainty. It could trigger our fear of worst case scenarios, that I'm going to fail, that I'm not going to be successful, so that I'm going to achieve and achieve and achieve and be perfectionistic and be detail oriented. All of that can create a lot of stress and overwhelm, and it can be fueled by anxiety and fear. And so it will end up eventually creating a lot of problems down the road for people, because a lot of people that are overachievers and success oriented, they can feel very depressed as well if they're not getting the success that they're hoping that they're getting. And so it
mm,
can create mental health issues. But I do want to emphasize the fact that our brain and our body are connected. There is no such thing as it's just a mental health issue, because when we're feeling anxious, when we're feeling depressed, when we're feeling stressed, it also impacts us physiologically. It impacts us at the physical level, where we can get high blood pressure. It can create heart problems. It can create ulcers in our stomach. It can create digestive disorders, insomnia. All of these issues can come from just being so driven, but not feeling in control of what is driving you. So, my goal is to make that anxiety work for you, because your overactive brain naturally wants to succeed. It naturally has a high bar, a high standard. But how can you make it work for you so that you're driving the bus instead of the anxiety driving the bus? Does that make sense?
mm. That makes a lot of sense, and but I suppose that takes a lot of self-realization to know whether your anxiety is actually taking over you, as opposed to you being in control of that. Would there be any truth to that? And I suppose, you know, how can you, let's say, notice these things sooner if you're somebody who's not particularly too self-aware?
So, a lot of times people with anxiety know that something is holding them back. What I try to do, it's not your job on your own to kind of figure out whether you have anxiety or diagnosing yourself with anxiety. I have this 5 pillar strategy that I use to really get to the root of what's causing these issues. So it's not the achievement that's going to give you fulfillment. I always talk about this as far as, like, look at all the billionaires or the successful Hollywood stars or TV and videos. I mean, just rich people, right? Just people that have reached their dreams and they've achieved the success that they've always wanted. But a lot of them end up being miserable. They end up going bankrupt. They end up uh, maybe ending their lives for whatever reason because they're just not feeling fulfilled, and that's because they're not really in connection with an alignment with what they really want out of life. So we want to feel content, we want to feel at peace, we want to feel aligned with what we're doing, so that what what we want out of life is also in alignment with who we are as a person. So if I'm not into excessive amounts of wealth or going to parties and doing this, living this life in them now, and I want something more lasting where I want to be able to be at peace with money coming in so that I can go take a walk, I can live a very calm life, then I might not be happy once I reach that peak that I'm looking for. So the one of the things that I try to focus on is what's at the root of this anxiety, what's driving you. A lot of people that have such a drive to succeed are doing it because they don't feel like they're enough. They don't feel good as a person. They might feel like if I have so much money, then maybe I will have better friends. Maybe my family will love me. Maybe I'll finally be accepted and be considered to be a smart person. So these are thoughts, these are irrational thoughts and beliefs that are activated by anxiety. And so, my goal when it comes to entrepreneurs or high achieving individuals is to get to the root of that. And I do that with my 5 pillar system. And my 5 pillar system focuses on your entire body, it goes from mindset. So, it starts with the mind, where we balance out your brain chemicals. We make sure that you retrain your brain so that you're not believing the lies that your brain is telling you that it's getting triggered from fear, and we calm your central nervous system. And then it goes at the physical level. We try and see, okay, what's going on with you physically, doing a blood test to see if are there any chemicals that are out of balance, or your hormones out of balance. What's going on with your gut? Are you lacking nutrients? Is your gut not getting the food and the essential nutrients that it needs to release those feel good chemicals for your brain so that you can feel calm and less reactive and less anxious? And then we focus on your emotions. Are there emotions, because there's so many emotions that were controlled, that control us, that literally we picked up subconsciously at the age of 5 or 6. And those emotions, those subconscious thoughts and beliefs continue to impact us in our adult life. And unless we go back and reprogram those thoughts and address those repressed emotions, we're going to continue to be reactive to things. We have no idea why we're reacting to it. And so that can actually limit us, and it can hold us back. It can impact our relationships. It can impact our financial abilities. It can impact our careers. So we need to address what's going on at the subconscious level, and then changing our behavior. So that includes your lifestyle. How can we change your lifestyle so that you're more efficient and more productive in your life, and calmer and less reactive? And a lot of people nowadays, with social media, with our phones we're connected to our phones 24/7, we're not resting and repairing our brain. We're not calming our system down. We have really bad habits.
Mm,
Excuse me. We have really bad habits in our daily life that is contributing to that anxiety. We're not living in alignment. We're going, going, going. We're not giving ourselves a chance to rest and repair. We're not. We don't have good disciplined habits in place to help us be successful in our jobs, and then in our life. And then the last one is somatic, and that includes the spirituality aspect of it. People feel untethered, I guess. They're not feeling grounded in their bodies. They're not aware of what's going on within their bodies. They're not aware of that connection between their breath and their reactions. So when we are constantly going, we're doing the shallow breathing, we're not doing the deep breathing, we're not taking care of ourselves at that level and grounding ourselves mentally, physically, and spiritually, then we're going to be more reactive. So all of that within this 5 pillar framework, I help you
mm,
to be more aligned and to get to the root of whatever is causing these issues, so that you can use that anxiety as fuel to help you achieve whatever you want to achieve without being controlled by it. I hope that makes sense.
mm. It makes a lot of sense, and that framework is really interesting when you phrase it like that. I feel like there's a towards the end when you're talking about giving, let's say, our minds a break and we don't necessarily tend to do that, especially in this day and age. And Lord knows how bad that's going to become with the introduction of AI and the metaverse and the stimulation that will be constantly be put under in the future. It's probably only going to get worse, and maybe that might actually invoke, let's say, a transformation where people realize, okay, well, this saturation and this overstimulation of whether it's the technology that we're continuously being bombarded by on a daily basis, that's not really conducive to a good mental health state. Now, I suppose the few things that I do, and correct me if I'm wrong, because sometimes I actually don't necessarily know when I'm giving my mind a break. I would do things and I'd feel like, okay, I feel like I'm recharged. But some of the stuff that I do, it would be playing football, be going to the gym, playing, doing MMA, uh, having a good conversation with people, going for walks. But I don't necessarily do these things as a coping mechanism. I just do them because I like to do them, and I'm not going to
Mhm.
continuously work for the whole day. But with these, simple things like sports, exercise, going for a walk, chatting with people, should people be a bit more conscious about doing these things and fitting these things into their daily life to make it a lifestyle?
Well, everything you just mentioned is great for creating balance in your life, right? I mean, you are connecting with other people, you're socially engaging your mind and body. And so, and physical exercise is definitely good for releasing a lot of this pent up energy that we collect. And having that exercise also balances out our brain chemicals, it balances out our hormones, it balances out our insulin level, our blood sugar level. So all of those things, you might not be doing it purposely to say this is what I need to do. That's how simple it can be. These are simple solutions that we need to embed into our daily life to make sure we're going to bed on time, we have enough time with our friends, we have enough time to, we're starting out the morning with a really good breakfast and eating, making good food choices throughout the day. We're not having heavy meals before bed. We're not, I had a patient that ended up having like an energy drink with friends one night, just hanging out, and he ended up having that instead. And he was up all night. He couldn't sleep. And so when we have that and we can't sleep at night and we're functioning on deficit the next day, our body goes into inflammation mode. Our brain is not functioning at the optimal level. We're more reactive. We're more tired. And so, all of those things, once we put in these systems into place where we're focusing and prioritizing our mental health. And when I say prioritizing our mental health, I'm talking about being more mindful and conscious and aware of, if I drink this, is this going to impact my sleep? If I eat this, is this going to affect my brain? If I stay up all night partying and mess up my sleep cycle, is that going to affect my behavior the next day? Just making good choices that are in alignment with who you are at the core, and then being okay with expressing yourself, because a lot of depression is a lack of expression. And so people don't, they stuff their feelings. They might be angry throughout the day, they might be really upset, they might be really sad, they might be really disappointed, and they just stuff their feelings. They don't have an outlet to address those emotions. So maybe start a journal habit where every day you're just dumping all your negative feelings in your journal and just writing about it. It doesn't have to be perfectly written. It just, my journal is literally my garbage can. I put in all kinds of negative thoughts in there without really going back. Like when you throw stuff in the garbage, you're not going to go back and look at it, right? So when you're dumping stuff in your journal, it's not about going back and reading it. Does it make sense? Is this okay that I said that? If you're thinking it, just dump it and put it in your journal, because what that does is it diffuses that emotional charge associated with that thought. So when you're getting all that out, that charge gets out as well. And so you're less reactive. You are not walking around with all these secrets and stuffed feelings. You have a place that you can dump all of your negative emotions into. So you're not walking around feeling weighed down. So those are basic things that you're doing that are intuitive for you. It makes sense for you, and that makes you feel good, whether you're actively doing it to have good mental health or not.
Yeah, yeah, that's very interesting. And you kind of make me think as well, like, because as we're talking about the topic of high achievers and how they struggle and cope with mental health, I do find it fascinating, let's say, because they are high achievers, so therefore they will have maybe an innate burn or sensation to achieve great things. Now, what really fascinates me is how can they, let's say, strike a balance between maintaining that strive of continuously trying to get better without burning themselves out, because it would be so hard to control that, right?
Well, you're right. A lot of these high achievers are focused on achieving to the cost of the sacrifice of their own mental and physical health, because they are not making that time, because they're like, I don't have time to take care of myself. I have to do X, Y, and Z. I don't have time to go to bed on time, because that's when I work the best, and that's when my mind, I can get the most done. So I don't go to bed until maybe 3 in the morning. And I don't have time to eat well. So then I go and quickly grab something from the fast food place, and I operate on coffee and sodas and cigarettes or whatever. And so I'm not taking the time to take care of myself. And that's how you end up burning out, because you don't have that balance. You're so single focused and so focused on achieving a certain task or a certain goal that you're not focusing on how can I create balance. But what people don't realize is that when you take the time to take care of yourself, you're going to be much more efficient. You're going to be much more productive. So for me, the biggest balance or that I'm striking is I go to bed on time, I make sure I'm getting enough sleep, but I wake up early, and I have a very slow morning. At least an hour of me just being very quiet, just focusing on the things that I need to do, my exercises, my prayers, my stretches, whatever. I focus on that first thing in the morning, and so I start off my day very calm, less reactive, and then I can get into doing what I need to do. And then for some people that really don't have the time to actually do a meditation exercise, you can literally set an alarm on your phone every hour, every 2 hours, to for 1 minute, just pause, close your eyes, and take a couple of deep breaths. Because people that are high achieving and they're constantly going, they're very shallow breathers. So you want to have really deep breathing from your diaphragm to send a signal to your brain that I am calm, all is well. And this way you reduce your stress level. You're less reactive. You're not activating your sympathetic nervous system, so that you're not feel in a fight or flight mode. You're not in a stressful mode. You're constantly you're calming yourself down so that you're thinking more rationally. You have more options in your solutions, because if you're in a stressful situation, you get tunnel vision and you're focused on only a problem, and that's making you react. You're really upset about it, instead of like having a more wider vision, and you can actually see the solution in front of you, because you're looking at the gray zones as opposed to black and white. It's all good or all bad, and you're freaking out in response if you're not taking that opportunity.
Mm. That's so insightful. And you touched on a point about, let's say, maintaining calm and inner peace in order to be able to excel and move forward. I do find one thing for me that I struggle with, and I'm sure that people struggle with it too, is, let's say, controlling and overcoming their bad habits. Now, I'm sure everyone has bad habits, and there are things that would slow you down, and but for me, I tend to delay, let's say, working on that bad habit until it becomes a real problem. And then I'm like, okay, Kareem, you need to just get it sorted. You need to get it sorted. And I hate the fact that I have to delay it to a point where it becomes so irritating, it becomes so annoying. Then I'll address it. But I'm sure there's smarter methods of going about it, as opposed to, making yourself suffer and then reaching a boiling point and you're like, oh, okay, time to take action. I suppose if you could maybe elaborate on that, and should you address these habits in the beginning, as a, rather than waiting for them to spiral into a point where they're very frustrating and then you take action?
It all depends on the habit. I mean, we all have bad habits, right? It's like right now, I don't want anybody to feel more overwhelmed than they already are, especially if they're entrepreneurs and they're trying to figure out how to strike a balance. You just pick one or two. It's like, I do believe in small hinges moving big doors, right? I mean, you want just a couple of things that you want to focus on that are going to make the biggest difference. So, what are, if let's say drinking is an issue for you, and drinking alcohol makes people go to like not get enough sleep, and they realize that by not getting that deep restful sleep, that's going to impact them the next day. They're not thinking very clearly, they're more reactive. If that is an issue for them, that would be a huge contribution to, if they can reduce that or change that or get stop drinking alcohol altogether. But that's not an overnight thing. That's something that you can start, like you have to try at least 30 days on improving a habit before it can become automatic for you. At least 30 days. So maybe go for 30 days. Like I heard the story with Tom Holland where he realized that his alcohol consumption was a big issue for him. And so he's like, okay, I'm just going to have a dry January. And then he realized, okay, that was the hardest month I've ever had, but that just tells me that I'm very dependent on this, and this is really contributing in a negative way to my life. So then he's like, okay, I'm going to challenge myself, I'm going to do February. And then he continued to do this until by June he realized, wow, I'm happier than I've ever been. So now he stopped drinking altogether. And so we have to pick one thing that's creating a problem for us and commit to that and see, how can I make this change? It's not about remove, like completely stopping. So for him, one of the biggest issues was, okay, I can't drink alcohol, but I go to all these Hollywood parties. I'm always surrounded by alcohol. How can I do this so that it's not a very difficult thing for me? So he started testing out different non-alcoholic drinks that he can still hold something in his hand and still, because a lot of people use alcohol as a prop when they're socializing. So he can still hold something in his hand and still talk to people, but it's all non-alcoholic. And the same thing with people that are smoking cigarettes, right? If they're quitting cigarettes, it's not about going cold turkey, maybe using a patch to get that nicotine, reducing that slowly out of their system so they can deal with the withdrawal effect of it, but they can maybe have pretzel sticks in their hands or something to kind of break that habit. Um, when it comes to food, maybe whatever your vice is. For a lot of my patients that are dependent on soda, for example, I help them reduce the sugar intake and reduce their dependence on sugar by slowly cutting back sugar and adding stevia, for example, in their coffee or in their sodas or in their drinks, so that they're still getting a little bit of that hit until they can reduce their dependency on it. So there are different things that we can do that slowly changes those behaviors or those habits without our brain freaking out and then just going back into having that fix, I guess, depending on the addiction or what the bad habit is.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And I mean, there's one thing that I've tried is to I downloaded this app called the Habit Tracker, and basically what it does is that it's you place in your habit that you want to improve, and then you get to like you can, for example, ask questions and then make notes of it every single day. Like this is something, you can make notes from your progress. But then there's also another option to create numerical values. Now, what I've done, for example, is that I put in the strength of the power that the habit has over me right now. I'd mark it, let's say 10, which is 10 out of 10. That means I'm having a bad day and this habit has just taken over everything. And then my goal is to get it down to zero. And I have, a few habits that I'd like to get it down to zero. And as you mentioned, building that 30-day sort of timeline, do you think, it's a good idea to, let's say, aim to have it to get it down to zero? And then if you do get it down to zero for, let's say, a continuous week, that means that, okay, well, you've practically conquered that habit. But then again, while you're getting it down to zero, you're still thinking about it. And that's still occupying your mind. And then maybe that might actually get you to quote unquote relapse. What do you think about, let's say, that approach?
I love that there's an app for it. I hope that more people use something like that. But that's
Yeah.
more of a visual reminder that you're actually working towards something. So what you're not really at zero if you're still thinking about it, right? So
Mm.
you have to honestly get yourself to a place that if it's not bothering you at all, like Tom Holland, it took him 6 months to finally realize, wow, I haven't had a drink in 6 months and I now finally feel really good. And this is something I
Mm.
want for the rest of my life. For 30 days, you might get yourself down and you might still feel really good and maybe feel in control, but it's not truly a zero until it doesn't have any more effect on you. But I like what you're doing with that though, but you have to replace that habit with a better habit.
There are people that say that you should counteract that habit with, let's say, a more pleasant response, and then that reversal training over time will actually get you to overcome it. And it's kind of strange because sometimes, and I don't know if this is common as well, and maybe that's also something that would prevent people from achieving great things, is that is there truth to, let's say, people wanting to cause frustrations in their life voluntarily? I know that sounds bizarre, but then sometimes when things are going good, you're like, there's something wrong here, you know? Why do we end up defaulting back to, let's say, that negative, pessimistic life, thought process? I do find that really fascinating. I do find that it is quite a common theme in my trail of thought, and I don't know if this is something that is just me or people share or can relate to that.
You're talking about sabotage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Self-sabotage, yeah.
Yeah, so a lot two things could be happening. It could be that your anxiety kicks in and you're like, wait a minute, things are going way too good. Something bad's about to happen. And so you're waiting for the worst case scenario, you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. But that reaction could be like what I talked about, the subconscious programming that happens to us when we're like 5 or 6 years old. Where maybe when you were 5 or 6, every time you felt good, something bad happened. So then you adopted this false narrative, false belief that whenever something is going too good, something bad always happens. So then your body subconsciously reacts to, wait a minute, I've been too happy lately. What's going on? And then you self sabotage that. A lot of people do that to their relationships. They do that
Yeah.
to their diet. If they're losing a weight and they're doing really well, they're just like, wait a minute, things are too good. And then they end up like falling off the wagon. Um, they sabotage themselves, but it's happening at the subconscious level. And this is why with my five pillar program, I do address that at the emotional level, because a lot of times we're not even aware how our programming from our childhood is continuing to sabotage us today. Some people might have money issues. There was a story of this woman. She's like, I always believed that making too much money was the root of all evil. And so whenever she would cross that 100,000 threshold, she would somehow sabotage herself so that she was always maintaining life underneath that $100,000 level, so that she wasn't going above it, because in her belief, she thought, if I make more money, then that makes me a bad person, and that's not a good thing. And then subconsciously, again, we're not even aware how much our subconscious programming impacts us. She would somehow sabotage the whole situation so that or maybe she would, let's say she made over 100, and she would go and blow 10,000 for nothing, just on buying on something that she shouldn't have even bought, just to get that balance back to where she felt comfortable. So it's subconscious programming that needs to be addressed and for us to be aware of.
Yeah, that is fascinating. It's crazy the way that the mind operates and works. It's such a fascinating thing. And I could honestly spend all day talking about, different nuances, but I do like to wrap up each episode with, let's say, a top advice that you'd like to give to people to, ensure that they would not be drawn back with the, let's say, things that would hold them back from actually achieving great things. Any, let's say, top pieces of advice that you can give to people?
Well, I would highly recommend starting a journaling program and writing down, creating a good roadmap of what you want for yourself within the next 3 months, 5 months, a year. What is it that you want to achieve? And write it down in a way that's very concrete. Find 5 areas in your life that you want to address. So for me, I always focus on the physical, the mental, the financial, my career, relationships, spirituality. So those are the areas that you can pick. And then underneath each section, like under health, you can put down, like, maybe drink more water, exercise, go to bed on time, or whatever. You write those specific things down for yourself so that you're getting a clear roadmap of what is it that you're working on this year. Under finances, how much money do I want to save? How much money do I want to make? What do I need to do to upscale my skills? Um, what classes do I need to take? What certification do I need to get? Under spirituality, do I want to incorporate a breathing exercise? Do I want to pray more? Do I want to feel more grounded? Do I want to, exercise? Whatever. You just have to find different things that you put in underneath each category, so you have a clear image of what you're trying to work towards. And then the journaling is really important in that whenever thoughts come up for you, or you notice that you're self-sabotaging, or that certain weird thoughts come up for you, that I'm not good enough, or maybe they're the imposter syndrome thoughts, or the fear thoughts, or worst case scenario thoughts, write those down as well, because the more you become familiar with that automatic script in your mind, the more you can talk back and challenge it. So one of the things that I talk about challenging these thoughts is ask yourself, is this 100% true? So let's say you have a thought that you're never going to be successful. Is that 100% true? It's not. And then if you say, yes, it is, I'm never going to be successful, I've been trying this for a while, I'm never going to, how do you know that that's 100% true? What evidence do you have? Show me the evidence that that is true. So if there is no evidence, then that's not a thought you want to hold on to and believe. So you can work on changing your beliefs. You can talk back to it and say, no, thank you for that thought, but I don't think that that's true. I'm going to continue to try, or whatever. You can have a conversation with yourself. And then just making sure that you are focused on those 5 areas that I talked about with my pillars, the 5 pillars, figuring out what's going on with me mentally. Do I need to retrain my brain? Do I need to balance out my brain chemicals? Do I need to get a blood test to see what's going on with me internally, to see if my thyroid is off, and that's why I'm being more anxious and more reactive? Is my gut health bad, and that's why I'm not getting the feel good chemicals that are released because of my diet is so bad? I'm not getting the nutrients that my body needs. Are there repressed emotions that I need to address? Is my lifestyle in need of a change? Do I need to get more disciplined in my life? And do I need to get more connected spiritually to myself, to God, to a bigger cause outside of myself? So those are the things that I would recommend to manage all of this, especially as an entrepreneur, because mental health, uh, all of this improves our mental health. I don't want mental health to be a negative thing. When we focus on our mental health, it is our health, the well-being, as opposed to mental illness. And so we want to prevent mental illness by making sure that our brain is healthy, that we're physically healthy, and that we're handling our emotions, and we're in alignment with who we are, and there's no cognitive dissonance, right? Cognitive dissonance is doing something that goes against who you are at the core. So when you're in alignment with who you are, then you're going to feel more balanced and more healthy moving forward.
Absolutely. Yeah, and a common theme that I saw across is that we got to put in the work in order to see changes. So, really fascinating stuff, and I'm sure your insights are going to benefit so many people. So, thank you so much for sharing that, and looking forward to our next conversation. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you so much.